Yes. So funny. Hey guys, if it's your first time joining us, be sure to subscribe to the Shifting into High Gear YouTube channel and watch some of the videos previous, as they will all kind of interconnect to what we talk about and the methods that we use as medical intuitives. I'm Lindsay Bil, and this is the wonderful Tammy Price. And we are certified medical intuitives that work under the heading of Shifting into High Gear.
Awesome. We believe that medical intuitives make up one part of a whole health team. So along with the other medical practitioners that you might be working with, medical doctors, family physicians, massage therapists, physiotherapists, acupuncturists, naturopathic doctors, we've recognized or we've witnessed that the folks who have the best chance of success for creating a natural state of healing for their bodies also incorporate a medical intuitive into that whole health team. That's a little plug.
I love it. And it's so true. We kind of provide like the unconventional methods and really help bring the body back into balance. And so through our medical intuitive training, we do train medical intuitives. And so one of the very first assignments that we offer up is to watch the Heal documentary. And this was a documentary, I think it came out maybe like 3 or 4 years ago now. It's been out for a while. But it is
17, I think.
Yeah, so it follows a couple different case studies on their journey through healing. Both of which have been facing chronic illness and chronic disease within their body. I believe their names are Elizabeth and Eva in the documentary. And the reason why we bring this documentary to the table and to our training sessions is because, one, it shows our students that healing can happen, and it can happen really, really quickly. We've been taught for so long that healing is a journey and it needs to take a lot of time. And, there is some truth to that. You have to be able to support the system into a space of healing. But from a medical intuitive perspective, if you're able to touch base on the root cause of disease, dysfunction, illness, ailments within the body, healing can happen instantaneously. And that doesn't mean that all of your symptoms are going to miraculously, disappear overnight.
They can.
They can, but you're going to notice something shift in your physiological being where all of a sudden you've stepped into expansiveness. You have taken responsibility and accountability for your healing journey. And you start to notice these shifts start to take place, not only in your internal world, but in your external world as well. And we see it when we work with our clients, where we'll have one phone call with them and then we go to do a follow-up call with them maybe a week or 2 weeks later. And they're like, oh my goodness, this just happened in my life and this happened, or I got a promotion, or I got fired from that job and I'm not worried about it, whatever it might be. They get really, really excited. And that opens up the space into healing. And so bringing it back to the Heal documentary, they follow 2 women on their journeys through healing. And at the end of the documentary, one woman ends up healing herself and getting to a really, really great space internally and externally in her life. And the other kind of closes off and shuts down her healing abilities and is still suffering with symptoms and chronic illness and chronic pain within her body. And so we kind of want to dive in and discuss that journey, and we'll add the link to the documentary below so you guys can watch it for yourselves and really come at this from a different perspective and watch it from a medical intuitive perspective rather than just an observer perspective.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because when we have our students watch it, they watch it before they even come to class, right? So that's like one of the very, like Lynn said, it's like one of the very first assignments. And so we just have them watch it, and what we do is we guide them. We say there are 2 women in the movie. One has liver cancer, and the other one has a skin dysfunction or disease, and one of them heals and one of them doesn't. So from your the perspective of where you're at today without even understanding what medical intuition is yet. What is it that allows this one woman to heal, and what is it that doesn't open up the opportunity for the second woman to heal? Then after they're done the training, we sit them down, like to close out the program. So now that you've been trained and understand medical intuition, and we won't be able to go into obviously in depth around medical intuition here in this space because we only have so much time. But like once they've been trained for a number of days, then we like, okay, so now that you've got a baseline understanding of medical intuition, what is it looking back that creates the opportunity for that one person to heal and not for the other? And the answers are, Aylin's like the answers are so different from when they first watch the film to they haven't the second time they watch the film. So I would just invite you to, if you have watched Heal documentary, to watch it again after we've finished this conversation or you've watched this video, so that you can kind of get the mindset and kind of get into a sense of critical thinking around what is it that didn't open up that opportunity for that second woman to heal. Mm-hmm. A little bit of a spoiler alert, it's the one who has cancer in the liver is the one who actually heals. And so for anybody who thinks through the mind-based functioning that a diagnosis of something like that can't be healed, this woman just is proof in the pudding. Like it's proof in the pudding that you absolutely, if you do the work, if you dive in and you work with amazing people, which I think we are, by the way, but that's just me. But if you work with amazing people, you do really create the space for yourself to heal. And then if you watch some of our previous videos, we talk a lot about, how you need to be proactive in that process. This is not just turning your power over to someone and saying, heal me. A medical intuitive is not the healer. A medical intuitive is the conduit of information that opens up the channel for you to be able to do the work, to be able to heal for yourself.
I love that. And like as a medical intuitive, or most energy healers, they go into this space of like things that you have somewhat been blind to in your own world, in your own realm. We get into this space of not wanting to feel our feels. And our mind is very, very good at capping us off when it feels that we are going into a space of trauma or into something that's going to create too much discomfort for us. And what we do as medical intuitives is create a safe space. We hold you in an energetic container with us, and we attune to our client in a way that we know kind of how to guide them and how to challenge them beyond their own constructs to break through some of these things in a really like healthy and safe environment. And when we look at the Heal documentary, I think that there's a big aspect of that in there as well. Is like one woman had a really good support system. She had a really phenomenal container that was held for her in her healing journey that allowed her to go into her discomfort, that allowed her to go into some of these painful memories and some of these things, that these experiences that her body held on to, and begin reframing them, not forgiving them, not giving great power away to them, but reframing them from that perspective of like, what was this trying to teach me and how is this trying to help me evolve? What was this experience doing for me to activate different parts of myself? And, sometimes I think about like a bowling lane and life being a bowling lane. And when you have a toddler that you're taking bowling for the first time, you put up the gutter rails so that the ball can't go into the gutter, and it like makes its way slowly bumping back and forth down until it goes down and probably gets a strike. And life is the same kind of way. We have these experiences that we bump into. And so whether it be like our knees start hurting or our back starts hurting, or we have gut health issues, or we are diagnosed with liver cancer, these are all just like bumper rails that are sitting here like trying to guide us and redirect us. And when we can start thinking of our diseases and our ailments and our dysfunctions in that light, where it's not like I'm being cursed or being punished by something, or my body is failing me. if we can start to change that perspective of like, oh, this cold or this ailment or this symptom is simply trying to redirect me or push me back into alignment, all of a sudden we have that space that we can allow ourselves to heal. And I think once we relook at the Heal documentary from that medical intuitive perspective, we really see how imperative that is in our like healing journey, and that we have to show up for ourselves, that we have to commit and devote to ourselves, and surround ourselves with people that are supportive of our journey and that are going to be there for us and hold that safe container for us to heal. um, and it's not always an easy process. Sometimes it looks like shedding things that aren't serving a purpose for us anymore, or looking at, oh, these people or these things that I had enrolled in my life were being used inauthentically to fuel that story of abandonment and rejection, or to keep myself playing small and playing safe. And sometimes the healing journey means stepping into that space of like, I have to end that friendship, I have to end that relationship, I have to leave that job, I have to move away from this city, just to activate the parts of myself that are soul activators and body activators, so that we can step into that space to heal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love what you said about like shifting the relationship that you have with the disease and dysfunction. Like the minute you reframe it, right? Like it's, and I'm gonna only can speak from personal experience, but I'll tell you that like I come from a family of breast cancer survivors, right? Like my former mother-in-law, my sister, my own mom, and then myself. And I remember when my mother-in-law was first diagnosed. I remember getting the phone call from my father-in-law at the time, and literally like the screaming and the crying and that was going on. And with all due respect, of course, when you get diagnosed with a life-threatening illness, there's a part of you that goes to the place where you're activating that sympathetic nervous system, and you're not in the state of groundedness, right? And so, for us, from the medical intuitive perspective, it really is getting to the place where when you do have something like that rise up, when you do have a physical disease or dysfunction rise up, that you're able to go to the place where you go, what is that here to teach me? Right? Right? Like I will tell you that when I was diagnosed, the best thing, and thankfully I had just started school for medical intuition the same day that I was diagnosed. But I remember when I was diagnosed, it was like, me saying to myself, you've got to get into a really authentic relationship with your disease. You've got to get into a really authentic. So you're not going to be in the place where you're like, why did this happen to me? Why is this in my body? Get it out of my body. Like literally, I was diagnosed in February and I didn't have my surgery for a few months after that. And so for a few months, I sat there with cancer in my body, and I wasn't going to the place where it was like, get it out of me, get it out of me. It was like, no, this is here. I'm going to come into a relationship where we can actually be friends, because we can be friends with people who, it's like this. I remember do you know Dr. Shafali? Have you heard
Yeah.
of her?
Yeah.
Really? Okay. So I watched a video of her the other day. My partner, Steve, and I are always talking about marriage. I want to get married. He doesn't really necessarily want to get married. We've been together for a long time, but we often talk about marriage because it's something that I would really like to have a second crack at, to be totally honest. And Dr. Shafali talks about marriage, and she says, we don't marry someone because we love them, right? We don't marry someone because we love them. What you want to do is marry somebody because they are your growth partner, meaning they activate you, they trigger you, whatever word you want to use. They activate you into a higher level of growth, right? And so think about that from the place of disease and dysfunction, right? Like my cancer activated me into a higher level of growth. How could I not be more grateful or more blessed for having that experience?
Oh,
I
so true.
literally can't be. I can't be. And so, yeah, obviously the worst, I didn't get to the place where I was leaving this human experience like so many of other people that I know. But even when it eventually, because we all get there, but even when I get there, I through this whole experience, I have now shifted how I view what happens when I get there, like the caterpillar going into the chrysalis, turning itself
Mhm.
into gel, needing the struggle to get out and then flying again, like, and that's a true story, like, because the minute you open up that cocoon and allow that butterfly to get out without having to have that struggle, it falls to the ground and dies, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that, they touch base on in the Heal documentary, which you also did in your own healing journey, is when you went through the treatments, you did your radiation treatments. And, so many of us know that when you get into that space, it happens really fast, like diagnosis and then treatment starts within weeks from diagnosis. And
unless
whether
you
you
live in
choose,
Canada.
yeah, whether you choose like chemotherapy or radiation or whatever your choice of treatment is, it can be invasive within the body. Like it's an intense process that the body goes through. And one thing that I find is like really beautiful that you did in your healing journey and that they touch base on in the Heal documentary is transforming that treatment from like, the invasive procedure that it is and envisioning love entering your body. And so in the Heal documentary, there's one part where they talk about envisioning like the chemo and the radiation going into the body and being like little piranhas that are just going in and like eating away at the tumor. And so in your mind's eye or in the placebo world, you're envisioning your tumor shrinking and shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, which aids in the healing and aids in the process of diminishing that tumor. In your perspective, you went and you envisioned the radiation as just like pure love entering into your body. And you can speak on that for yourself. But one of the fascinating things was that you didn't end up with like the burn marks or anything from the radiation, because you were so centered in that loving energy entering into your system. So do you want to kind of talk about how you were able to reframe that part of your journey?
Yeah, that was a really cool experience because when you're ready to do the radiation, they give you a cream. At least my radiologist gave me a cream to slap onto that part of my body because my mom had burned severely when she had radiation for her breast cancer. And so I remember saying to the guy, is there latex in this? Because I have an allergy towards latex. He's like, yeah, no, there's no latex. First day I slap it on, I go in for my radiation treatment. Sure enough, I come out, I've got hives. And I'm like, well, there's definitely got to be latex. Call the surgeon. Sure enough, they find out later on down the road that there was absolutely latex in there. And I'm like, okay, so I am going to really now. So not only am I going to imagine that it's pure loving and entering into the body from the perspective of healing any cancer cells that might be left over after the surgery, but I'm also going to get into the place where as it's hitting my skin, it's just pure love, right? Like, so it's the whole process. Like the minute it leaves that little, whatever it is, that thing that it opens up and the radiation comes out of, and, the minute that connects with me, it's going to be pure love. And so I didn't burn. And like I had other doctors, I had a couple of doctors call me asking me why I hadn't burned because it didn't make sense to them, right?
Mhm.
So this is what can happen. And at the same time, my mom was at that point passing away of lung cancer. And so my days were spent 7 o'clock in the morning, I'd have my treatment. And then the rest of the day I would spend with my mom upstairs. And the funny thing is that like so many people have other like symptoms like exhaustion and like all kinds of other stuff. I wouldn't say I wasn't tired, but I can tell you that the level of exhaustion that I experienced was not nearly as extensive as some of the folks that I've seen and some of the folks that I've worked with, and from what I've experienced with people in my family.
Mhm. So how important do you think mindset was in your ability to overcome your cancer? Your cancer.
So mindset, well, I think it's probably the biggest component. There's no question in my mind. It's because really healing is about mindset.
Mhm.
Mindset is what creates the disease or dysfunction in the first place, right? The more time we're allowing the mind-based functioning to dominate, the more opportunity we have for disease or dysfunction to land, because it's, so many, what ends up happening for the folks who don't know this, you have an experience that you've experienced in your external facing world. You now internalize that experience through the mind-based functioning, through the lens of interpretation, and you start to create a story around it. And it's that story piece that then finds a home in the physical body. And so, if you have an experience and you witness it, or for example, you lose your job, that's the truth, right? We won't argue with facts. The fact is that you lost your job. Anything beyond that is then the story that gets created through the mind-based functioning that then lands on the physical body. So it's like, I can't put food on the table. I'm not going to be able to eat. I'm not going to be able to pay my mortgage. I'm going to lose my home. My wife's going to leave me. And whatever it is that your mind starts to create, that's the part that then lands on the body as a physical symptom. So my mindset was instrumental, Linz, in helping in allowing the disease to present itself in the physical body. And it was the shifting into high gear, shifting that mindset that allowed the disease to heal.
I love
1000%.
that.
And, honestly, and we talk about this a lot in medical intuition, we do need to touch the root of, the root cause. So we do need to go to that external facing event, but we don't need to stay there. This isn't therapy, right? Like we're not in therapy. So, when you touch that event that you've created the story around, and you reframe it, like to me, the reframing part is an important piece. Like I still do a lot of reframing, because we're human, right? We're spiritual individuals living in a human experience. And so we still come up against things where we're creating stories. And it's like, but then when you have the awareness, right, you catch yourself. You catch yourself before it goes into this full-blown story where you've connected with so many people and brought them, enrolled them, and fueled the flames and made it even bigger. So a long way to answer, but mindset it works both ways, right?
Yeah, I love that. And they touch base on that in the documentary as well, between like placebo and nocebo. So placebo being the positive thoughts and the expansive thoughts that we call into our system, versus the negative thoughts and the negative or the limiting beliefs that we create in our system. And they see it in both, on both women's journeys, that it plays a role in it. And, throughout other medical case studies and whatnot, they see how mindset is really like a massive, massive factor in people's health and healing and their overall well-being. And so
I'm careful around that too, though. Like, I feel like this needs to be shared, like this needs to be said, because we're in a world where people are believe that you fake it till you make it, right? Like I'm going to take my mindset into a positive mindset. I'm going to call in only good thoughts. But they're still going through the lens of interpretation, and the lens has been created over a long period of time. And so this is why often faking it till you make it isn't successful. But the other piece is that it's often not successful because it's a very inauthentic thing, right? Like we're meant to have all kinds of thoughts, just like you said earlier, like we're meant to have all the feels, right? It's what you do with those thoughts. It's what you do with those feels that creates the opportunity for healing, or creates the opportunity for disease or dysfunction, right? So like it's not as enough to walk down the street and go, oh, you've got beautiful eyes today, and oh, look at that wonderful flower, and oh, I'm just feeling all lovely and love, and my experience, it just, that's not enough. Like it's not that it's not enough, it's just not authentic, right?
Yeah. There's a difference between like walking out and like seeing flowers and being like, oh, it's a beautiful day. And it's a different thing to like stand there and embody the beautiful day and like smell the flowers and like feel the vibration of the flowers in your system, or like truly like closing your eyes and listening to the birds and the wind and feeling that internal connection to it. It's a difference between intellectually understanding something and like allowing it to be embodied within your cellular membranes.
Totally.
Yeah.
I love this practice. Let's see how it lands with you. So you're walking down the street and you see the flowers and you go, oh, look at that flower. And then you hear a bird and you go, oh, I hear that sound. Or you see somebody and you go, your eyes just pop. Your eyes pop. Okay. So look at the difference. Oh, you have beautiful eyes. Oh my God, look at that gorgeous flower, right? Like one is a mind-based functioning and one is not, right? So
Yeah.
can you catch yourself as you're creating an interpretation around something,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's like we go through life going, oh, that person's overweight, that person is skinny, that person is beautiful, that person is not attractive. Like we go through life labeling these things because and what we're doing is we're activating the mind-based function every time we start to label things. So it's like, can you go out, talk about shifting mindset? Can you go out on a walk and catch yourself every time you go, oh my God, look at that. It's a flower. It's the
Mm-hmm.
sound of a bird. That person has eyes that pop. They're neither good nor bad. They're neither ugly nor beautiful. They're neither skinny nor fat. They just are. And like,
Mm-hmm.
so can we get into the space where that's what we're practicing? Because I think the more we do that kind of activity,
Mm-hmm.
the more we can be in the space when we are diagnosed, as we almost all are, with a life-threatening illness at some point in our lives. Then we can get in a space where we go, cancer is neither good nor bad. It just is.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to tell you, when I say that, we talk about the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, when I say cancer just is, there's no charge around it. There's no trigger, there's no activation. That means that my level of vibration is matching any disease or dysfunction that may arise in my physical body. I'm not giving it a charge. I'm not amping it up to go on to a full-blown, red flag situation.
Yeah. And I think that's really powerful too, is like, can we get to a place where we are not having a physiological response to an emotional stimulus, and can we like stop ourselves from having an emotional response to a physiological stimulus? It's very easy to get caught in that loop. We see it a lot with anxiety, where our mind starts telling us something like, oh, you're going to do public speaking. And so, like as the hours get closer to your like time to stand up at that podium, you start to get really anxious, and like the fear thoughts start going through. But then as the thoughts are going through, your hands start to get clammy, you get sweaty, your heart rate accelerates, all of these types of things. And what you're kind of saying is to interject in that process and be like, I'm just going to get on the podium and I'm going to share whatever my heart needs to share, whatever I came here to do and came here to share. And then all of a sudden we notice like our hands like don't get as clammy and our heart rate starts to drop down, and, engaging different regulating activities. So like, can we do breath work? Can we do heart therapy? Can we have an elastic on our wrist that you're going to snap to create a different type of sensation to cut that loop and stop the interpretation around it, so that we can maintain homeostasis, we can maintain balance within our system. That's such a powerful thing that you brought up there.
Yeah, we went off, right?
I know.
I don't know how that works. Because like we channel, right? Like, so it's whatever is meant to come through is meant to come through, and then we're going to share it. And if it lands with you, great. And if he doesn't, that's fine too. We don't expect everybody to buy into every little thing that we say. This is really a process of take what you need and leave the rest behind. And, all we can do is speak from experience.
Totally. So if we were to give people a call to action following this, what would you say to do? Mine would be, once again, watch the documentary again from a different perspective, from the MI lens of what did this person do to support their healing journey? What did they do that went kind of unsupportive to their healing journey? And really watch it from that different lens and kind of take some feedback for yourselves, as far as like, if something is to come up in our world, like how do we reframe it? How do we respond to it? And what, accountability and action can we take to support ourselves?
Yeah. And so I love that. So the action stuff, watch the documentary from a whole new perspective. And then the second piece is, do the exercise like we talked about, like walk out onto the street or in the park, and witness how often you want to interpret what it is that you see. And then if you can catch yourself and get into the space where you're practicing non-interpretation, I think is the best way to express it. Non-interpretation. If you can get to the place where you're witnessing yourself practice non-interpretation, what other parts of yourselves do you feel being activated in that process? Because I'll tell you, when the minute I start to practice non-interpretation, which I try to do most, if not all of the day, I feel more loving.
Mhm.
I feel more intuitive. And I can feel the sensations rising up inside of my body in a way that I would not have been able to if my mind was busy interpreting everything in my external facing world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks for joining us again, and we will see you again soon.